Hello there, I'm Dr. B. Hello, nice to meet you. And this is going to be a video which will be not so brief about the major modes for bass players specifically. So the first thing we need to look at before we launch into the main body of the video is what is a mode. So a mode is basically for every scale. So say for example we've got C major scale. Now it will have a set pattern for each scale, so it will be C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. And in between those is a tonal pattern of tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 and then there's a semitone back to the octave. And basically a mode, so this is the scale of C major, but the modes of C major are basically for each of these notes there is another scale. So for example, I'll show you on the bass. So if we start in, let's make this a bit bigger as well so you can see. So if we start in C major, if you're here to learn the scales, that we'll come back to that in a bit. So this is just the basic explanation. So if you play C major, that's the first mode, and then you just play C major but starting on D, that is the second mode. So on and so forth. And so on and so forth. So each note of the scale becomes its own separate scale. Yeah, each note of the scale becomes its own separate scale, effectively, is the best way to explain it. So that is what is the modes. So just a quick, yeah, that'll do for now. I'll be right back. So, just a quick list before we go into the main body of the video of what we're going to go through. We're going to go through the following information. We've already done what is a mode, and then now we're going to look first at the intervals. So, the distance between, say for example, C, C sharp, that's a semitone, and C and D is a tone. So like C, C sharp. And then we're going to list all the intervals up between so we know what every note of the chromatic scale is, but we'll come back to that in a minute when we get to that section. The next thing is the tonal pattern, which is, like I wrote in the intro video, tone, tone, semitone, tone, tone, tone. Tone, 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 tone. But then we're going to apply this further to each individual mode, so we know how to make them on any instrument and in any key. So that'd be really useful. And then the last thing we're going to look at is examples of how to use them. So that'll be how to use them, yay! And that'll be basically things like the correlating chords, the styles of music that they're used to play over, and how they all can join up together. So that's what we're going to be looking at. See you in the video. So we're going to work on a section now called intervals. Now this is essential because when I'm doing the description of the modes, we'll be looking at things like, for example, this. So root 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 VE. And you need to know what each of these numbers represent, because there might be flat seconds or flat thirds or double flat sevenths or various different combinations of them. We won't actually be using double flat sevenths, but that's the idea. So first of all, we're going to look at something called the chromatic scale. So if you look down at the piano briefly, we see, if we start on C for example and we play every note, what's called the chromatic scale, and they're every note used in Western music traditionally, and they're a 12-note sequence based on an exact number of frequencies in multiples. I can't remember which, but I think it's multiples of 8, but that's by the by. So we're going to shift over to the bass now, and we're going to look at the names of the intervals. So first interval we're going to look at is the minor second or flat second. It's really simple. It's just, if you're starting on C, you just go up. That's a minor second. So you might play it like, where would you put it? C. Not a terrible sound, equally terrible on piano. But if you stack that on top of the chord, it can be quite nice, alright. I don't know, that wasn't a very good example. But the next interval, anyway, moving swiftly on, is the major second, which is major, or just second, so major second. And that is literally the next sequence up. So that's this tone up, as opposed to a semitone up. And then we've got, next is minor third. Minor, that says minor third, or flat third, which is either this or this. Now I'm just going to go through now, rather than meticulously writing them all out, I'm just going to name them, but I'm going to do it slowly. So we've got minor second, second, flat third, major third, perfect fourth, tritone, XYZ style, perfect fifth, augmented fifth, or flat sixth, major sixth, minor seven, and major seven. So you need to memorize these basically, and it sounds like this. So you got minor second, I'm going to go through and name them. So this is how I would practice it if you're just newly learning the instrument and you don't know this. But you do need to know these intervals for the rest of the video, so that's why I'm labouring the point now. So minor second, major second, minor third, major third, perfect fourth, tritone, perfect fifth, augmented fifth or flat sixth, major sixth, minor seven, major seven, octave. And that's the chromatic scale. So we basically covered the intervals there, and that's what you needed to know. Please go back and review that if you didn't follow it from there. And actually, yeah, that'll do for now. Back in a sec. So the next thing we need to look at is the tonal pattern of the major scale, and it goes as thusly: tone, tone, semitone, tone, tone, tone. Let me just do that a bit more clearly. So we're going to do a grid, 7 by 7. So tone, tone, semitone, tone, tone, tone. And then we're going to do tone, tone, semitone, tone, tone, tone. And then we're literally just filling in the gaps like this. Now, what are we looking at here? So we're looking at, so T stands for a tone, and S stands for semitone. So, for example, moving up one note of the chromatic scale is a semitone. Moving up 2 notes is a tone. So if we start on C, we go tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 and then a semitone to back to the top. And then each of these scales that you're looking at here now is the modes, essentially, of the major scale. Now this will make a bit more sense when you see the rest of the video, but essentially if you memorize this pattern or can even work out this grid that I've just drawn and write it down, so you just have to memorize tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 then you can apply that to any key or any scale. So for example, G major has an F sharp, so it's the first key to the right of C on the circle of fifth. But you play up the scale, tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 and semitone to finish. And then you get the modes of that. So you start on the next one, tone, semitone, semitone, tone, 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 so on and so forth. But this will all become more apparent, but I just thought I'd show you this grid for now, just as a basic explanation. So more in the future, please keep watching. Okay, so here we are, and we're doing the major modes for bass players, as you can see there. And the first mode we're going to look at is the first mode of the major modes, which is I, O, Ni, An. Now if we're in C major, that would be obviously C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, which would be and on the bass, if you imagine, so looking at my bass here, just quickly for reference, that's a high C, that's probably a brash, and that's a low B. So if you're not accustomed to it, these middle four strings are the ones to pay attention to. So we start on the 3rd fret of the A string, so that's my 3rd string up or 4th string down, depending how you look at it. And the first mode of the major scale goes, wait, hold on a minute. So we got root, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, octave. So I'm going to just write that out for you in a sort of tab form, just so that you can see what I mean. So if this is your bass strings, you've got E, A, D and G, it would be so starting on the 3rd fret, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. So hopefully that makes some sense, and you can see that we're playing it again. So there is Ionian, C major. Now the other important thing to know for this is the scale formula, how you make it. So we've got a root plus major 2nd plus major 3rd plus major 4 plus major 5, sorry, perfect 5, that's a perfect 4 as well, major 6, major 7 and octave. So if you shift over to the piano briefly, if we got C major, and if we're playing Ionian or the major scale in G, which has an F sharp, it would go so there should be another section of the video that explains what the intervals are, but this is, so that's the formula for, this is the formula for Ionian. So that's the first mode. And the second mode we're going to look at of the major scale is known as Do, Re, An. And that goes like this. So if we're in the key of C major, you would start on the 2nd note of the C major scale. So that's your range of notes there. And then on the bass, we start on the 5th fret, which would be slowly. We got 5, 7, 8, 5, 7, 4, 5, 7. I'll write that out for you as well, so you've got it clearly written. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is E, A, D, and G. They're your frets. And so we're starting on, this is the 5th fret now. So we got D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D. So it's one more time. So 5, 7. And that's the Dorian mode, which you can use over 7th chords. Or a blues, for example. You can also use Mixed Lydian, which is where you get that phrase from, but you can, say you're playing like a funk bass line, you can use Dorian as well. That kind of thing. So that's Dorian, which is the second mode of C major. In this case, it's called Dorian, and it would be D Dorian, and the formula is root, 2nd, flat 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, flat 7th, and then obviously the octave as well. So that's the formula. So we got root, 2nd, flat 3rd interval, perfect 4th, perfect 5th, major 6, minor 7, octave. I just like throwing that phrase in there whenever possible. So that is Dorian. 3rd mode is Phrygian, and that is the 3rd mode, and it would be in E. So it'd be E Phrygian in the key of C major. So obviously we move up like we did before to the 3rd increment of the scale, so the 3rd note of the scale, and then we play this range of notes. There we go. Now on the bass, this is the following pattern if you look at the bottom right corner of the screen. So just, well, the bass cam, you can see where the bass cam is, that's fine. That's there. So you start on E with the 7th fret, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E. We'll go through more slowly and try and get a bit closer. Starting on the 7th fret, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E. So, the canvas. The scale formula, the scale shape on the bass then. So just to make sure in case you didn't follow that. So if we start, this is now our 7th fret. So you've got E, F, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E. And we'll go over these again at the end in written form with a bit neater because I'll draw them up properly. But this is just so you can follow along how they work. And the formula for the scale is as follows. Root, flat 2nd, flat 3rd, flat 3rd, 4th, fifth, flat 6, flat 7th, and then octave. Sorry, let me clean that up. And octave. So that's the formula, that's how you work it out, and you should see another section either before this or after this explaining what the intervals are and how to work them out. So just one more time on the bass. E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E. And there's two distinct notes there, because otherwise you could have just the minor scale, which is that, but it's got a flat second. So if you know your minor scale, just change the second down to a flat second, and that's your Phrygian scale. It's got a lovely scale sound to it, lovely. It's about as Spanish as you can get without the major 7, and that's the harmonic minor scale, which we're not discussing today. But it's got that. It's commonly used in like metal and I don't know, just that kind of thing. Okay, that was a bit of a lame example. I apologise for nothing. So the next scale starts on F, and it is a lovely scale. One of my personal favourites of the major modes is Lydian, and that is root, 2nd, 3rd, sharp 4. Hold on, actually, I'm getting ahead of myself. Oh, what have I done? Anyway, Lydian, that's how it's spelled. And the range of notes is from F to... And it's this interval here, the B, that makes it distinct from the major scale, because the major scale, so we started on C, but we're starting on F for Lydian. So if we played an F major scale, the same pattern, then we sharpen the 4th. So that tritone there. So that's the interval to listen out for, is the sharp 4. Because that's what makes it different from the major scale. So, what else do we need to know? We got the notes, the blah 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 blah, the formula. So, root, 2nd, 3rd, that says 3 on it, sharp 4, 5, 6, 7, and then octave. That's my lovely adorable son going whap 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 in the background. And then, actually, hold on. Just to make sure you've got that. So it's a major scale with a sharp 4. And then the pattern on the bass, let's try and get these a bit more lined up now. If we're in the key of C major, we use, what was it, F Lydian. And it would look like this. So this is G, D, A and E. Kind of rushing through this, but I will come back to it. So we start on the 8th fret. So if we made this the 7th fret, and the 9th, 10th, and the 12th. So it'd be F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F. Now I will do like a little revisit of these at the end, where I just show you through them more meticulously, but that's the basic scale shape for Lydian. Next we have, the lovely and ever loved Mixo Lydian. So it's the same as Lydian, but with Mixo at the beginning. And the signifying note of this is it's a major scale with a flat 7. So if you remember that. So if we were, say again we're in G. So he's got that F sharp there. If you flatten that, it becomes G Mixolydian. So it'd be G in the key of C. That's meant to be a C. And on the bass, to make this shape, we start at the 10th fret. So we've got root, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, flat 7th octave. So just a bit simpler rather than me just ripping through it for no reason. We've got G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Cool. So we just write that out as a tablature just to make sure these ideas are cemented. Now, if I'm going over this in a bit of a basic way, feel free to rush through. But this is absolutely a beginner's lesson. So there might be bits that you already know or you find almost even patronizing, but I'm trying to limit that. So this here is the 10th fret, and this is the 12th. So we got G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. So the pattern is sort of like do 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 do. So that's G Mixolydian. Next we have the ever lovely, ever loved that range of notes, which is called the Aeolian scale. That's an A, that's an N, that's an A, or the natural minor scale. So, and this would be in A if we're in the key of C. So we've seen the range of notes on the piano, we know the name of the scale, so what does it look like on the bass? So we can actually start at the bottom of the neck now with the open A string and go root, 2nd, flat 3rd, 4th, 5th, flat 6th, flat 7th, octave. Or we can go right back up to the 12th as well and go. Bring that in a little bit closer because we're at the dusty end of the fretboard. Cool. And just for those of you that want a tablature reference so you can look back at it, Aeolian goes like this. E, A, D, G. And this is our 11th fret, let's say. So that's 11. So this is 12. So it goes root, 3rd, 2nd, flat 3rd, 4th, 5th, flat 6th, flat 7th octave. Or A, B, C, D, E, E, F, G, A. Such as thusly. Now we have the final remaining mode of the major modes, which is again like quite a cool scale that I'm quite a fan of, which is Locrian, so L-O-C-R-I-A-N. And it sounds like this. Fingering on piano needs to be worked on. And on the bass we can do it at the 2nd fret. So we've got root, minor 2nd, minor 3rd, 4th, minor 5th or flat 5th or tritone, minor 6th, minor 7th octave. Oh. Locrian, and the scale formula for it, just to, I know he's just gone through it, but I'll write it out again anyway. Root, flat second, flat third, fourth, flat fifth, or sharp. No, yeah, flat fifth, flat sixth, flat seventh, octave. So the signifier of this scale is that only the fourth isn't flattened. Okay, so everything except the root and the fourth are flattened, so that's how you can try and sort of remember that. And then on a fretboard, we would look at it like E, A, D, G. So we start in the second position, but this can also be applied, so it starts on the second fret, but you can also jump that up to 14 as well. I'm assuming you know that that is the case with these instruments, but let's just do it anyway. So what have we got? We're in B Locrian now, in C major. So we got 2, 3, 5, 2, 3, 5, 2, 4. Is that all good? Everyone with me? Cool. So just one more time for your viewing pleasure. And that is all the major modes on bass guitar. And just because I like doing it, I'll show you what they sound like all conjoined together. So we've got C Ionian, D Dorian, E Phrygian, F Lydian, G Mixed Lydian, A Aeolian, B Locrian. Oh, I just realised you can't see that. I missed Aeolian as well. That's A Aeolian, B Locrian, and then it drops us all the way lovely back to C. Cool, so I'll be back with more information in a bit. Bye! So this is the second section, and what we're looking at now is the chords and scales from a purely theoretical standpoint. Now you'll see that I've written the notes in a kind of grid like this, and you can fill in the grid. It's quite good practice to do that, but we're just going to use C again as an example. And this is the range of the notes, and there's a couple of reasons for doing this, but I'm just going to keep writing them out. As you can see, they form like a linear pattern, so it's quite simple to work out. Ooh, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, and B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B. Okay, so some of that's missing there. Hold on, let me just unobscure that. So that's the idea anyway. So on the piano, that goes. You get the idea. It goes up and down the scale in a linear fashion, and each one of these is a mode of this of the major scale. So you got Ionian, you can't see because it's hidden behind my face, but the first scale is Ionian, second scale is Dorian, then Phrygian, Mixo-Lydian, Lydian, Mixo-Lydian, Aeolian, and Locrian. Now the reason that I'm going over this again is to explain how we make now the chords of the major scale in the following pattern. So if we're doing seventh chords, what we would do is we would take the root of the chord, miss a note, play a note, miss a note, play a note, miss a note, play a note. So that would be, let's get a nice red colour. So outline it. So you start with C, E, G, and B. So that'd be C, E, G, B. So So that's the first chord of the major scale, or the first seventh chord of the major scale, and it goes on further. And so on and so forth. So you play through all the, so we'll just remove this and then I'll write down the names of the chords more clearly. So let's say, for example, so yeah, we'll start with C major. So that is C major 7, and that is a root major 3rd, 5th, 7th. Now on the bass, if we move over to the bass, let's make the bass a bit bigger for this. We can apply the same principle. So there's two shapes that are worth learning for major 7 chords. So you've got the C. Oh, didn't have my bass turned on. C, which is the root major 3rd, and then the 7th. And then you can jump the 3rd up an octave as well and play it like this, which is a lovely. So if you're ever soloing around in that, that's quite a nice. And then there's the other major scale shape which I first showed you, which is like that. So you can jump around. You can do lovely things with that. You can just play up and down scales using just major 7. So they're really nice chords, really simple, and it's just literally root 3rd 7, or there's the root 7 3rd, which would actually be the, what would that be, the major 10th, but root, and then you've got the 7th in there, and then the 3rd. So there's those two different scale chord shapes for you for major 7. So that's how you create a C major 7. I'll leave the bass a little bit bigger now because I'm going to be showing you these for each chord. So the next chord sequence would be D, F, G, C. So D, F, G, C. Is that right? D, F, A, C, sorry. Where's my brain? And that is a minor 7 chord because it's got the root, the flat 3rd, normal 5th, and a flat 7. So the next chord of C major is D minor 7. A lovely minor shape. Let's see what we've got for minor 7 shapes. What's in my brain for minor 7 shapes? So if you start on D, so we've got root 3rd, flat 7, simple. You can jump that up to the top of the neck here if you've got a 6 string, or here if you're on a 4 string. And that's like a lovely. That's just a half diminished chord, but that's irrelevant now. So at the moment we're looking at root 3rd 7. And then there's another way of playing it which I quite like as well, which is like that. So all we move the 3rd up to the top. Now you can jump the 5th in, for example, if you're doing like a bossa line. But we generally ignore the 5th in making bass shapes just because it sounds a bit muddy. It might sound right on my bass, but I've not got much treble on it. I'm not really sure because I can't really hear. But they're the two shapes anyway. So you've got root 3rd 5th, or root 3rd 7th, root 7th 10th, or major 3rd, minor 3rd there. So more or less they're the two shapes you need. So the pattern would go. So let me write out the whole pattern. So we've got major 7, minor 7, so that's C and D, and we've got E, which is also a minor 7, so we just play the same thing, same two chords. But starting on E, and then we've got F, which would be a major 7 again, So major, minor, major, minor, minor, major. Now this is the next chord shape, is C, B, D, F, which is a dominant 7. It might seem a bit obvious to some people, but they're not the people that the video is targeted at. So for if we're on, was it G? We're on G. So let's start here. We've got a root, major third, flat 7 now, or root, flat 7, major third. Let's jump this further up the neck so you can see it more clearly. So if you're on your A shape, root, third, flat 7, as opposed to the major 7, you've got a dominant 7, which is, dominant chords are basically major chords with flat 7s. And then further up the neck, well, we've got another one here. Oh. So we've got the root, flat 7, and the major third stacked on top. And then you can basically, with dominant 7 chords, they're really common in jazz, as are major and minor 7s, but with dominant 7s, so let's say you there's a lot of modal changes that happen around 7th chord, so they're really useful things to know if you ever and then we'll come back to it, but the basic point of showing you these chords is that you can apply each mode to each chord. So say for example we've got C major, D minor, so on and so forth, and you go up the scales, but I'll go over that again in a minute. So the next chord that we need to learn, so we've got an after the G dominant 7, we've got an A again minor 7. So and the next chord after that that's relevant, that's a different shape, is B, D, F, A, otherwise known as a minor 7 flat 5, or half diminished. So it's a minor 7 flat 5. So it's just the same as the minor 7 chord, but with a flat 5. Now how we apply this to the bass is slightly more convoluted, but so we're starting B, so we've got a root. That's generally how you make that kind of, oh no, where's that? But the key to the shape is the flat 5, and then sorry, the first shape I showed you wasn't accurate, but basically what we've got a root, 5th, 7th, and the 3rd, so we're just stacking it on top. So you can do this as like an inversion, so over B. I just can't find a clear way to show you that shape, but it's a barring there, or if you're up on if you're on a 4-string, you've got and then the flat 5. I think I made that quite clear. So it's just that shape basically. So combining all those shapes together, we've got the following pattern, which is major, minor, minor, major, dominant 7, minor 7. Oh, there we go, I just remembered the bloody chord. Hold on, let me sit back a bit and then put it over here. So we got to the 7th position, and we got, which is actually root 3rd and the 5, but we haven't got that minor 7 in there because most people don't have that string. So root 3rd, flat 5. Anyway, they're all the chords and shapes. So I'm sort of dithering on a little bit here, but the basic idea is that you can play the scale that correlates to each note of the key. So like, if you're on the also, if you're in the key of C major, for example, like we have been the whole time through, you can play not just each chord with the scalar, that's just a root, 3, 5, 4, 2, 1, root 3, 2, 1. Now you can play any of the scales I showed you in the previous section of the video over this. How can I best explain? I haven't got a looping function, unfortunately, because of the way I've got to record. But let's say you've got that chord progression, and you use E Phrygian. Next, C major. Sort of fudging this, but you get the idea. Basically, you can use any scale as long as it's the correct scale for the key. Going up and down the major scale, you can use any of these modes over a C major chord progression. So I've blithered on enough now. I'm probably going to chop this up, but that's the basic gist of it. So awesome. So to briefly explain what I was blithering on about before, I've got a little pre-recorded chord progression in C, and I'm going to demonstrate how you can use any of the scales of C, and then there'll be another little section using other examples of different scales. But this is basically, you can use any of the major modes over the root. So this is a demonstration. We'll do a little walking solo. So C major, D Dorian, E Phrygian, F Lydian, G mixed Lydian, Aeolian, B Locrian, back to C major, that's the rough gist of that. Just a quick demonstration. I might chop that up into little bits, but it explains how that works. So I'll be back in un momento. So we've got the same sort of arrangement of this again, but this time what we're going to do is we're going to play a different mode for each chord. Sorry, I'm looking at the wrong screen. There we go. Different mode for each chord. So A minor, G, F, 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 G, G, C. So we start with A minor. G Lydian, mixed Lydian, sorry, F Lydian, C major. So that's fairly simple to understand, I think. You can play each mode with each chord of the key. Simple. And then one last basic example is how you can play the modes. So for example, in this case we've got a C major 7 to a B flat major 7. So what happens, we've got these places chord progression, and we can play various of the modes with major thirds over these two chords. So if we start on C major, B flat major, fairly simple, so straightforward to imagine. But then we can also, because Lydian has correlating notes, so Lydian, which remember has got our tritone, it's a major scale and there's a major tonality to the chords, so you can also go using the same sort of chords over the same sort of keys. Simple.